I never expected to be involved in a tournament for serial killers, but here I was, in round 2. Even though I had made it here, I still hadn't killed anyone. Yet 2 weeks after the first round had concluded, I received my second envelope. I thought about taking the envelope directly to the police, but I had to be sure. I opened it up, and once again it contained a flash drive. That wasn't all it contained this time though. No, it also contained a smaller envelope with the word motivation written on it. I couldn't stop myself from opening it, but I really wish I hadn't. Inside the envelope was a single photograph. It was a picture of my parents, but it wasn't any normal picture of them. They were tied to chairs with gags in their mouths. Placed between them was a digital clock showing the date and time. If the clock was to be believed, then this photograph had only been taken 1 day prior to me receiving it. There was a message on the back of the photo. This is what it read: "No more assistance from the police. Good luck, friend." Of course I tried to call my parents, but it was no use. No matter how many times I called, they couldn't answer. After a few attempts I realized I was wasting time. I picked up the USB and didn't hesitate to put it in my personal computer. Once again I was greeted with a black screen and a distorted voice. I'll do my best to recreate it again. Hello again. We'd like to start by congratulating all 31 competitors who made it to round 2. Unfortunately, we did lose one potential contestant to a stunning double kill. Competitor number 13 was the quickest to eliminate their target in a time of 36 hours 22 minutes. As a reward, they will be given the unexpected by this round. The rest of you shall have your roles reversed this round. Any conflicts have been settled by a coin toss. We are also upping the stakes this round. Only deaths will be accepted for advancement. If a hunter fails to eliminate their target in the time frame, then their location shall be exposed to their opponent. If this still fails to produce results, then we will send in our own hunters, and both contestants shall unfortunately be disqualified. The theme of this round will be blood. Whoever has the bloodiest finish will receive a bonus going into the next round. Good luck! You are a hunter this round. This means you will be tasked with pushing the action against your opponent, but as you know, they will fight back. You have been given a 12-hour head start in order to make travel plans. You have 1 week to eliminate your target. We hope that we have provided you with adequate motivation to perform this task. You will have 30 seconds to copy the information about to be shown on the screen. After this message, a face popped up on my screen. Along with the face of a man there was text at the bottom of the screen. The text provided me with a man's address, name, place of work, and the car he drove. I tried to take a screenshot on my computer, but all my controls were locked. I quickly got up and sprinted to get a pen and a piece of paper. I was barely able to finish jotting down the information before I was once again met with lines of code, and an empty flash drive. I sat there blankly for a minute. How was I supposed to kill someone? I'd never really thought about killing anyone before. Of course, maybe I had a fantasy here or there, but never anything serious. Whoever was behind this all had my parents though. If I failed, would they die? Not to mention my target. He was supposed to be a serial killer. It seemed unfair. He had experience with this, and he had obviously passed being a hunter in the first round. Would I even be able to beat him at his own game? I wasn't sure, but I had to try. I began to pack my things. The location I had been given was several hundred miles away, so I needed to get on the road as soon as possible. I didn't have a gun, and there really wasn't time to purchase one. What I did have was a replica samurai sword. I bought it somewhat as a joke, and partly because I thought it was badass. I wasn't sure I would use it, but it was the biggest weapon I had, so I grabbed it. I also packed an assortment of smaller, but still potentially deadly knives that I had. I hit the open road. I still had no idea what I was doing, but I had a long journey to plan something out. As I was filling up at the first gas station on my trip I had an idea. I purchased a few gas cans and filled them up. I figured they may come in handy at some point. I continued to try and formulate some sort of plan on my way to my target, but it seemed impossible. He knew I was coming, and he probably had something planned out for me. Yet here I was floundering trying to think up anything. I did have a week to figure it out, but that still didn't seem like nearly enough time for something like this. It was about 15 hours later when I arrived in my target city. I had been slowed down a bit by traffic, but otherwise the trip had been fine. It was the middle of the night and I was exhausted, but I decided to drive by my target's home first. I just wanted an idea of what I was up against. I followed my GPS to the address I had been given. I was led to a 2-story home in the middle of a neighborhood. Nothing really stuck out about the home, but the vehicle in front did also match the information I was given. The house did seem a bit large for a single person. He could have a family, or a roommate. I didn't linger on the thought. I drove a decent distance away to a hotel and crashed. I woke up around 1 PM, I quickly got around, and began to head back to my target's home. He should be at work right now, so this would give me some time to explore. The tricky part will be breaking into his home in the middle of the day without getting caught. Luckily there was an alleyway behind the home. He had a large fence surrounding his backyard, so it shouldn't be too challenging at all. I donned a large hoodie and a mask. It would certainly make me stand out more if I was seen, but I would rather risk that than being identified. I easily hopped the fence to the backyard. When I got to the back door I began to attempt to pick the lock. I wouldn't recommend watching videos while driving, but I had watched several on my road trip, and learning how to pick a lock was one of them. It took far longer than it should have, but I was eventually able to open the door. I silently made my way into the home, just in case. It wasn't necessary though, I was alone. For the most part the home seemed normal. I was able to breathe a little easier when I saw there were no signs of children living in the home. I scoped out the first and second floors, making sure to take note of the layout. I was about to leave when I noticed one last door. I opened the door and was immediately hit with a putrid smell. I had thought something had smelled a bit off when I was exploring the home, but I wasn't entirely sure. Now I knew for certain that something was not right. The plastic mask I was wearing didn't do much to guard me from the smell. The door led downwards to a basement. I absolutely did not want to go down there, but I knew I had to. The further I went, the more intense the smell became. The bottom contained a small room. There wasn't much to the room, but in one of the corners there was a large freezer. I knew immediately the freezer was the source of the smell. I approached it knowing what I would find inside. I braced myself before opening the freezer. After a deep breath I opened it to see what it contained. If you guessed it was a body, you guessed correctly. It was a girl, mid-30s. She was well into the process of decomposing, but I'm sure the freezer had slowed it down somewhat. Was this his previous target? My thoughts were cut short as I heard something. I turned and looked into the opposite corner to see what had made the noise. There was a camera, now fixated on me. I moved out of range of the camera, and watched as it continued to follow me. He was watching me. I sprinted out of the home. He knew I was coming, but now he knew that I was here. I was supposed to be the hunter, yet here I was running again. I got back in my vehicle and retreated back to the hotel. I still had no clue what to do. I wonder how many cameras the man had. The one in the basement couldn't have been the only one. Had he been watching me the whole time I invaded his home? I knew I was a bit of an underdog here, but I had hoped to have some advantage. I decided it was all or nothing now. I was going to wait until night, then I would return to the home. One of us had to die. I just hoped that if it was me, that my parents would be released. Night came all too quickly. I prepared my weapons, as well as myself. It could have very well been my last night alive. I could only justify what I was about to do by knowing what might happen to my parents, and knowing what he must have done to the girl in his basement. I once again made my way to the man's backyard. This time I brought along the sword, and a few knives. I'd also made a makeshift Molotov cocktail. I wasn't sure if I would be able to use it, but it was one of the few things I knew I could easily do. When I reached the back door I prepared myself to pick the lock again, but I didn't need to. The door was already unlocked. It didn't feel right, but I was already committed. I slowly stepped inside. I immediately noticed the door to the basement was open, and that the light was on. I wasn't sure he was down there, but I knew I didn't want to go back down. So, I lit a Molotov and threw it down the staircase. It burst into flames, and slowly began to spread. I heard frantic movement coming from below. I moved out of the way of the door and placed my back against the wall while drawing my sword. I began to hear rapid footsteps coming up the stairs. I took a deep breath. When they were almost at the top I wound my sword back and began to swing it downwards. My swing connected with the man, but it wasn't a direct hit. The moment he saw me he had jumped sideways just in time to dodge what would have been a killing blow. His right arm, however, wasn't so lucky. It had come off clean, along with what it was holding. His now disconnected arm fell to the floor and dropped the gun it had been gripping. The silenced pistol. The man fell to the floor gripping the stump that had once contained his arm. The cut had been surprisingly clean, and was bleeding a lot less than what I would have expected. After a moment the man made an attempt with his left hand to go for the gun, but I simply kicked it away. "Please, don't do this. They have my wife. I had to do it. I have to save her," the man pleaded with me, now on his knees. "I'm sorry." This was the last thing I said before I swung the sword once more. This time the man's head came off clean. I watched it roll to the bottom of the basement. "I had to do it," I said to myself out loud. I had just killed a man. I felt the tears begin to roll down my face underneath the mask. I didn't have time to contemplate the situation anymore though. The flames coming from the basement had now begun to spread further. I ran from the home as the flames continued to consume the home. I made it to my car and immediately began my journey home. I stopped along the way to burn the clothes I had been wearing, and I found a random field to bury the sword in. I didn't stop to sleep. I don't think I would have been able to anyway. I felt empty, like part of my soul had been taken from me. The worst part is I knew it wasn't over. When I arrived home I received what I expected. Another text. This is what it read. "Outstanding work, and all on your own this time. We wanted to be the first to welcome you to the Killer Sweet 16. We'll be in contact soon." If you like this story, smash the like button, and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you want to be notified on the latest videos, hit that notification bell.